And I left home probably around 17 and went to New York City to try to pursue it. I had a lot of odd jobs. I did voiceovers, I did backgrounds, I sang at jazz clubs. I did background for P. Diddy, Bad Boy. I did a lot of things, to try to get to where I wanted to be.
What if Blue Ivy Carter wasn't Beyoncé's child? What if the name Blue wasn't random at all, but a cover-up, a legacy stolen, a woman erased, and a billion-dollar empire built on silence? Because before Beyoncé was the queen of everything, before Jay-Z became hip-hop royalty, there was Blu Cantrell, a rising R&B star, a voice that lit up the charts, and a woman who got too close to the truth, then suddenly gone. No label, no press, no career. Just whispers of a secret relationship, a hidden pregnancy, and a breakdown that might not have been a breakdown at all. This isn't just a theory, this is a pattern. And by the time you finish this video, you may never look at the Carters or the name Blue Ivy the same way again. Before the gossip, the rumors and the breakdowns, there was just a girl named Tiffany Cobb with a voice that could shake walls. Blu Cantrell didn't come from a viral moment. She didn't get her start on a flashy talent show or ride in on someone else's fame. No, Blu grinded. Before she ever had a record deal, she was hustling behind the scenes in the music industry, doing background vocals for legends, Diddy, Faith Evans, 112. She was everywhere and nowhere at once, singing hooks that millions heard, but no one knew her name, yet. People inside the industry knew, though. They talked about her in quiet circles. That girl's got it. Not just range, but emotion. Not just pitch, but presence. She had that rare magic, what some people call star quality and others just feel in their gut. And in 2001, the world finally caught up. Blu's debut album, So Blue, dropped like lightning. The lead single, Hit 'Em Up Style, Oops, wasn't just a song. It was a movement, a slick, catchy revenge anthem, wrapped in high-gloss production. The kind of track that made women sing along in cars, with the windows down, and made men squirm in their seats. It was bold, feminine, unapologetic, and it was everywhere. Radio couldn't get enough. MTV kept it in rotation. The track soared up the Billboard charts and didn't stop. The album went gold in just 2 weeks, a number artists today would kill for. She was getting Grammy nods, major press, and tour deals lined up like dominoes. The world had found its next R&B princess, and her name was Blu. But it wasn't just about one hit. Her entire debut showcased her range. From soulful ballads to up-tempo bangers, Blu proved she wasn't just a one-note wonder. Critics praised her vocal control, her tone, her storytelling. She wasn't trying to be anyone else. She wasn't chasing trends. She was the moment. Her look, distinct, stylish, fresh-faced, with a touch of edge. She had the kind of beauty that felt natural, yet camera-ready, before filters, before clout, before the industry turned itself into a machine. She was a mix of class and cool, glam and grounded. And just like that, Blu Cantrell became a name to remember. But that's the thing about the music industry. It remembers you when you're hot and rewrites you when you're inconvenient. While Blu was climbing the charts, collecting awards, and gracing red carpets, something darker was already forming behind the scenes. Industry politics, quiet whispers, power players taking notes, not just on her success, but on who she was getting close to. And one name started coming up more and more. Jay-Z. But back then, nobody could have guessed that her rising star would soon become a target, and that the same machine that lifted her up would later be used to erase her completely. Because in the music world, fame is never just about talent, it's about control. And when Blu stopped playing by the rules, her whole world would start to shift. But before the silence, before the headlines, and before the conspiracies, Blu Cantrell was undeniable. She had earned her place, and everyone knew it. And then, just as fast as she rose, she began to fade, or rather, she was faded.
Oh my God!
I heard he's hung like a horse blue. Oh, you didn't know Beyonce? Did she really have him locked down?
I think so. I think they're in love.
Every rising star has that moment when the spotlight gets too hot. For Blu Cantrell, that moment had a name, Jay-Z. It started off like any industry connection. Two successful artists moving in the same elite circles, award shows, label events, studio sessions. It's normal, but in the early 2000s, the way Blu and Jay were being spotted together started to raise more than a few eyebrows. Industry insiders whispered about the chemistry, not the staged, PR-approved kind, the real kind. People talked about seeing them together at exclusive parties, cozy vacations, even behind the scenes at events. and then came the tabloid headlines. But what blew the lid off? A single question from Wendy Williams. On air, in front of a national audience, Wendy asked Blu, point blank, "Have you ever kissed Jay-Z romantically?" The room tensed. Blu didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. She laughed, nervously, smirked, looked away. She didn't deny it, didn't explain it. She let the question hang in the air like smoke, and the silence said more than words ever could. In that moment, everything changed. The rumors exploded. Headlines ran wild. Jay-Z's new flame? Beyoncé's rival? Because this wasn't just any fling. If the whispers were true, Blu was entangled with one of the most powerful men in music, and that put a target on her back. And here's where things get even murkier. Around the same time those rumors hit their peak, Beyoncé was beginning her solo career. She had just stepped away from Destiny's Child and was being positioned as the next superstar. Her team was tight, her image untouchable, controlled, polished to perfection. If Jay-Z was being linked to Blu, bold, opinionated, unfiltered Blu, that could become a problem. Not just a PR problem, a brand problem. Because to the people behind the scenes, Beyoncé wasn't just an artist. She was an investment, and any mess, any scandal, any other woman could threaten that investment, especially if that other woman had a voice just as strong and a platform just as powerful. But Blu wasn't the type to stay silent. In a now infamous interview, she dropped a line that people didn't fully understand at the time. She implied that Jay-Z chose Beyoncé not because of love or chemistry, but because she was younger, more naive, easier to mold. At the end of the day, Blu said, younger, less savvy girls are just easier to control. It sounded like shade, maybe even bitterness, but years later it plays like something else, a warning. And whether it was intentional or not, Blu had just stepped into something way bigger than herself. A love triangle? Maybe. But this wasn't high school drama. This was business. Big business. The kind that doesn't forgive mistakes and doesn't tolerate women who talk too much. Because in that world, it's never just about relationships. It's about power. And Blu, she had just crossed an invisible line. As Blu Cantrell's name lit up charts and talk shows, something was happening on the other side of the spotlight. Beyoncé was rising, and fast. Fresh out of Destiny's Child, Beyoncé wasn't just launching a solo career. She was launching a legacy. And behind her, a machine. A calculated, image-obsessed, industry-shaking machine, led by one man who already had his hands in every room that mattered. Jay-Z. By 2003, Beyoncé was becoming the face of mainstream R&B, and suddenly, the conversation shifted. Where Blu Cantrell had once stood shoulder to shoulder with stars like Ashanti and Monica, her name was now slipping through the cracks, and the timing, too perfect to ignore. Because as Beyoncé's solo star was ascending, Blu's presence was shrinking. Not gradually, not organically, like someone had pressed mute on her entire career. Her label, Arista Records, stopped pushing her. Her second album, Bittersweet, had strong vocals, solid tracks, but it got little promotion. No big rollout, no hype. Her tours were cut short, the budgets vanished. And when it came time to renegotiate her contract, nothing. No offer, no warning, no explanation. Just silence. For fans, it felt confusing. For Blu, it felt like betrayal. But that wasn't even the worst part, because the more she tried to speak, the more the industry turned its back. She accused Beyoncé of copying her image, the music, the visuals, the sound. She claimed Baby Boy echoed the style of her own track, Breathe. She pointed to Bonnie and Clyde's video with Beyoncé, saying the Western theme looked eerily similar to her roundup visual. Was it a coincidence? Maybe. But Blu didn't think so. She saw a pattern, Beyoncé climbing, and every woman in her path being pushed aside, quietly, systematically. In interviews, Blu stopped holding back. She called Beyoncé immature, accused her of lashing out over Jay-Z instead of addressing him directly. If you have issues with your man, she said, take it up with him. Don't take it out on the girl. That wasn't just a clapback. That was a direct shot. And from that moment on, Blu Cantrell wasn't just a singer with a few hit records. She was now an enemy of the empire. And that's where things got dangerous. Because Beyoncé wasn't just anyone anymore. She was turning into the industry's crown jewel, the face of pop culture. And when you go up against that, you don't just lose airtime, you lose everything. Suddenly, Blu couldn't get press. Her features dried up, no new singles, no album, no tour. She had the talent, the looks, the voice, but none of it mattered anymore. Because in an industry that thrives on power and silence, Blu was too loud. And she was about to find out what happens to artists who refuse to play the game.
I'll tell you that much. I don't have a crush on no. No, I didn't. No, I'm really selective about it.
What?
Really, I really like him though. And I don't care who he's dating. I always had a crush on him.
One day she was all over the charts. The next, gone. Not faded, not burned out, erased. By the mid-2000s, Blu Cantrell was nowhere to be found. No music, no press, no interviews, no public sightings. It was like she'd been deleted from the industry in real time. And the crazy part? No one could explain it. Because this wasn't your average career slump. This wasn't, she changed direction, or she lost her passion. This was something else. A silence that felt enforced, and people began to notice. One of the first to speak out, Jaguar Wright, neo-soul artist, industry insider, whistleblower. Jaguar had seen it all and lost a lot for telling the truth, but she never held back. And when she talked about Blu, she didn't sugarcoat a thing. Jay-Z worked very hard to erase you, Jaguar said in an interview. He did it to me, he did it to others. But with you, it was personal. According to Jaguar, Blu wasn't pushed out of the industry because her music failed or she wasn't marketable. She was removed intentionally, systematically, because she got too close to something she was never supposed to be part of. That something? The Carter Empire. Jaguar even took it a step further, saying the name Blue Ivy wasn't a coincidence, that it was a deliberate overwrite, a replacement, a way to keep Blue's name in the headlines, but on Beyoncé's terms, in Beyoncé's image. It sounds wild until you look at the timeline. Blu disappears in the mid-2000s, no explanation. Then in 2012, Beyoncé gives birth to a daughter and names her Blue Ivy. Fans who followed both artists couldn't ignore the connection. Why that name? Why now? And that's when the conspiracy theories began. Was Blu's silence not just because of her talent or her attitude, but because of something deeper? A secret relationship? A pregnancy? Something that, if revealed, could ruin the curated narrative behind music's most powerful couple? Because if Blu had a child with Jay-Z and Beyoncé was never meant to be the mother, then everything we know about the Carters would fall apart. And according to Jaguar Wright, that's exactly what they were trying to prevent. She claimed Blu wasn't just blackballed, she was targeted. Every deal vanished. Her label refused to renew her contract. Publicists cut her off. Even radio DJs who once played her hits were told to move on. And when Blu tried to come back in 2013, it was already too late. She announced a third album, called herself a free agent, started teasing new music, but nothing ever came of it. No videos, no buzz, no press cycle. It was as if every door she knocked on had been welded shut. It was too quiet, unnaturally quiet. And then came 2014, the moment where everything cracked open, and Blu's name finally hit headlines again, but not for a comeback. Instead, she was found running through the streets of Santa Monica at 2 a.m., barefoot, screaming that someone was trying to poison her with gas. Police detained her. She was hospitalized for a psychological evaluation, and just like that, the industry had its narrative. Crazy. It was instant. The headlines didn't ask questions. They didn't check the history. They didn't care that this woman had once sold out shows, topped charts, and made the world sing along. They just labeled her unstable, unhinged, and closed the book. But was it really a breakdown? Or was it the final scream of someone who had been silenced, pushed out, and stripped of everything until that scream was the only thing she had left? Because when you start seeing the same pattern play out across multiple artists, it stops looking like coincidence and starts looking like a system. On the surface, it sounds insane. The idea that Beyoncé's firstborn daughter, Blue Ivy Carter, might not be her biological child at all, and that the name Blu could be a direct nod to the woman who was pushed into silence. But when you start piecing together the timeline, the players, and the very specific details, it stops sounding crazy and starts sounding calculated. Let's rewind. Blu Cantrell all but disappears from the music scene around 2004, shortly after her second album. One moment, she's charting and doing interviews. The next, gone. No farewell, no retirement post, just a vacuum. Then, 8 years later, in 2012, Beyoncé announces the birth of her daughter, Blue Ivy. And that name, it wasn't just unusual, it was specific. Blu, the exact name of the woman Jay-Z was once romantically linked to. The same woman who claimed Beyoncé had copied her style. The same woman who accused Jay of manipulation. The same woman who suddenly had no career and no voice. Now let's talk about that interview. You know the one. In 2011, Beyoncé appeared on the Australian show Sunday Night. She was glowing, wearing a tight dress and proudly showing off her baby bump. But then, she sat down, and the dress folded. Not like fabric, like skin. Her belly seemed to collapse like it wasn't real. The clip went viral. Viewers called it the collapsing bump. Conspiracy theories exploded overnight. Was she wearing a prosthetic? Was she fake? faking the pregnancy? Was a surrogate carrying the baby instead? Beyoncé denied it, of course, said the rumors were ridiculous, claimed it was just the angle, the lighting, the fabric. But to this day, that footage has never really been explained. And when you pair it with Blu's total disappearance, right around the time Beyoncé would have needed a surrogate, it gets weird. Because here's the question that won't go away. If Beyoncé wasn't carrying Blue Ivy, who was? And that's where the theory comes in. Some fans believe Blu Cantrell was coerced, that she had a child with Jay-Z and was either forced to give it up or had her pregnancy hijacked in a way that destroyed her physically and mentally. Others take it even further, that Beyoncé, upon learning Blu was pregnant, panicked, that she used her power, her influence, and her team to not only erase Blu from the industry, but to rewrite the entire narrative. Think about it. Beyoncé's image is pristine, flawless, a goddess in heels. What would it do to her empire if it turned out her firstborn wasn't biologically hers? What would it do to Jay-Z's? If Blu Cantrell had surfaced in 2012 and said, "That's my baby," it would have caused a media apocalypse. Billion-dollar deals would have crumbled. Endorsements, tours, documentaries, shattered overnight. So instead, Blu stayed quiet, or maybe she was made to. Jaguar Wright again didn't bite her tongue. She said Blue Ivy wasn't a coincidence. She said the name was a message, a way of claiming what had been taken, while publicly pretending it never happened. "That's not just a child's name," she said. "That's a cover story, a way to bury the truth, in plain sight." And here's the part that hits even harder. Blu Cantrell never had a child, at least not publicly. There are no baby photos, no birth records, no announcements, nothing. It's like the story was scrubbed clean. So the question isn't just, was Beyoncé pregnant? It's, what happened to Blu? Because in this theory, Blue Ivy isn't just a name. She's a replacement. A beautiful child wrapped in love and luxury, but built on a legacy that doesn't belong to Beyoncé at all. And while the world celebrated a new Carter heir, the woman who may have brought her into this world was running barefoot through the streets, screaming for help, and being labeled insane. It sounds dark, it sounds twisted, but in the music industry, image is everything, and truth, that's optional. They always call them crazy when a star starts speaking out, when they stop smiling for cameras, when they stop following the script. The industry doesn't negotiate, it doesn't compromise, it discredits. And Blu Cantrell, she wasn't the first, and she definitely wasn't the last. Let's go back to 2014, the year Blu reappeared after nearly a decade in silence. But it wasn't at an award show. It wasn't a comeback performance. It wasn't a new single. It was a headline. Blu Cantrell detained after running through streets, screaming about poison gas. Santa Monica, 2 a.m., barefoot, panicked. She was taken for a psychological evaluation. The media circled like vultures, washed up, unstable, meltdown. And just like that, the world stopped seeing her as a singer and started seeing her as a cautionary tale. But here's where it gets eerie. That exact pattern? We've seen it before. In 1996, actor and comedian Martin Lawrence, at the height of his fame, was found in traffic in Los Angeles, waving a gun and shouting, "They're trying to kill me!" Sound familiar? The media said he was mentally ill. He said he was being followed. In 2016, during a concert, Kanye West stopped mid-show and started calling out names: Jay-Z, Beyoncé, and other industry elites. Days later, he was forcibly hospitalized. Britney Spears, controlled by a conservatorship for 13 years, drugged, silenced, her every move dictated, not because she was dangerous, but because she was inconvenient. These weren't isolated incidents, they were warnings. Because whenever a celebrity steps outside the line, starts asking the wrong questions, or refuses to play their part, suddenly they're unstable. Suddenly they're a liability. Suddenly the narrative flips from icon to insane. And Blu, she walked that same road. But here's the twist. She wasn't crazy. She was scared. She was trying to survive. According to Blu, that 2014 incident wasn't a breakdown. It was a desperate escape. She said someone really was trying to poison her. She said people close to her weren't who they claimed to be. That her own lawyer, assigned to protect her career, was secretly working for the other side. The label, Jay-Z's circle. Her words. That lawyer ended up representing them. They were all working together to take what was mine. She claimed she never had access to her masters, never got real royalties from her own songs. Every time she pushed back, she got cut off. And that night in Santa Monica, that wasn't rock bottom. It was a last resort. But by then, it didn't matter. The media had its soundbite. The world had its conclusion. Crazy. They didn't ask why a woman who once stood on Grammy stages was now running barefoot in the street. It didn't wonder how someone so gifted could vanish so suddenly. They didn't dig, they didn't question, they just moved on. Because that's how the industry stays clean. You discredit the truth teller before anyone has a chance to believe them. And when you zoom out and look at the full picture, it's not just a Blu Cantrell story. It's a playbook, a pattern, a machine that lifts you up when you're useful and crushes you when you're not. And Blu, she wasn't just erased. She was the prototype for what happens when you cross the wrong names.
Stewart and Red Zone, and he came in, he saw me, he was like, yeah, okay, whatever. I was sitting on the couch in the studio, and he started playing the song. And he heard maybe not even like 30 seconds, 40 seconds, and was like, wait.
Blu Cantrell wasn't the only one. She may have been the loudest, the boldest, the one who dared to speak on camera, in interviews, and behind closed doors. But she wasn't the first, and she wasn't the last. Because as Beyoncé's solo career skyrocketed, a strange thing happened. Other women started disappearing. Not physically, not in some dramatic Hollywood thriller kind of way, but professionally, publicly, musically. They were once everywhere, on red carpets, in music videos, performing at award shows. And then suddenly, they weren't. Let's start with Maya. She was it in the late 90s and early 2000s. A Grammy winner, a dancer, a fashion icon, a voice with range and flavor. She had collaborations with everyone, from Cisco to Jay-Z. She even had an Oscar-winning song with Lady Marmalade. But once Beyoncé launched her solo career, Maya disappeared from the mainstream. Her label deals fell through. Distribution dried up. Her albums became indie drops with no major promo. She went from center stage to side conversation, and no one ever explained why. She later admitted in interviews that she had to rebuild her career from scratch and hinted at being blackballed after label politics went sideways. Then there's Monica, another powerhouse. She and Brandy were the R&B rivalry of the late 90s. She was winning awards, selling out shows. Her voice had that raw emotion that made every song feel like a confession. But where did she go? After a couple of massive albums and hits, Monica's name just fizzled. She didn't fall off. She was pushed out, quietly, softly, the way the industry does when it doesn't want headlines, just obedience. And then there's the biggest what if of them all. Aaliyah. Before Beyoncé became the queen of everything, Aaliyah was that girl, a trendsetter, a triple threat. She had already made her mark in music and was moving into Hollywood with real momentum. She was poised to be the face of R&B and pop. Aaliyah wasn't just a singer, she was a blueprint. But in 2001, she died in a plane crash. Tragic, sudden, shocking, and the timing? Chilling. Just as Destiny's Child was preparing to go their separate ways, just as Beyoncé was being positioned for a solo takeover, Aaliyah, the only real competition at her level, was gone. No one's saying it was planned. No one's saying there's a smoking gun, but the timing changed everything. After Aaliyah's death, the lane was clear, the stage was open, the industry needed a new queen, and it didn't take long to crown Beyoncé. Do you see the pattern yet? Blu Cantrell vanished after conflict with Jay-Z and Beyoncé. Maya, silenced after building a strong R&B presence alongside Beyoncé's rise. Monica, momentum slowed as Beyoncé's machine took over. Aaliyah, gone just before Beyoncé's solo debut. It's not just coincidence, it's a consolidation of power, because Beyoncé's rise wasn't just a natural progression, it was engineered, managed, protected. Every potential threat removed or redirected. And here's the wild part, Jay-Z was at the center of all of it. By 2004, he wasn't just a rapper, he was the president of Def Jam. He had real power, industry power, the kind that makes or breaks artists, signs contracts, cancels them, controls radio, press, distribution, everything. And guess what? Blu's contract just happened to be dropped around that time. She later revealed that her own lawyer during that period was also working for the label. That's not a small oversight, that's a setup. If I had known, Blu said, I would have gotten my own lawyer. They took what was mine. So it wasn't just that Blu got left behind. She was outmaneuvered, legally, professionally, personally. And when you stack her story next to the others, it stops being a tragedy and starts looking like a blueprint. By now, it's clear this was never just about music. This wasn't a feud, it wasn't a falling out, it was a power play. At the center of it all, the Carter Empire, Jay-Z, Beyoncé, billion-dollar brand, global influence, cultural domination. They didn't just succeed in music, they rewrote the rules of the game. But rewriting the rules often means rewriting history. And that starts with erasing anyone who remembers how things used to be. Blu Cantrell wasn't a threat because she lacked talent. She was a threat because she knew too much. She was there. She was in the rooms. She was involved, romantically, professionally, emotionally. And according to her, she was betrayed by the same people who once promised to protect her. Her lawyer, working for the label. Her contracts, buried in red tape. Her voice, silenced. She says she didn't own her masters, didn't get proper royalties. And when she tried to fight back, the machine turned on her. Her reputation tarnished. Her name scrubbed. Her mental health weaponized. And this wasn't just about industry politics. According to Blu, someone tried to poison her. Gas, confusion, fear. She wasn't hallucinating. She was escaping. And 2014 wasn't a meltdown. It was a breaking point. She had nothing left. No label, no team, no protection. Only her truth. And even that was being used against her. But here's what makes it worse. She's not the only one. You've seen the pattern. Maya, Monica, Aaliyah, even Jaguar Wright, who became one of the few brave enough to speak out. And then there's names like Tierra Murray, once hailed as the next big thing under Jay-Z's wing, only to vanish after getting too close. Rumors say Beyoncé found out and shut it all down. Some say a warning was sent to other labels. Don't sign her. And Kathy White, a woman allegedly pregnant by Jay-Z, who reportedly planned to go public. She died the day before the story was supposed to break. Coincidence? Maybe. But in this world, coincidence gets you killed, and silence gets you rich. This is about controlling the narrative. Because the Carter brand isn't just built on music. It's built on perfection, image, power, the idea that they're untouchable. So what happens if someone challenges that? What happens if a woman steps forward and says, I had his child. He erased me. I was the blueprint. It all crumbles. The fashion lines, the record deals, the legacy. Blue Ivy, no longer a symbol of Black excellence, but a question mark that never got answered. And Blu Cantrell, not just a forgotten star, but the missing piece of a story no one was ever supposed to finish. That's why she had to be erased. Not because she wasn't good enough, but because she knew too much. And if there's one thing this industry fears more than talent, it's truth. So when you see Blu's name trending again, when the footage resurfaces, when the conspiracy comes back up, remember, every cover-up starts with calling someone crazy, and every empire is built on someone else's silence. But silence doesn't last forever, and maybe, just maybe, Blu's voice is finally being heard again. When people talk about the music industry, they talk about hits, about platinum plaques, about who's trending, who's winning, who's at the top. But what they never talk about is who had to disappear for those people to get there. And that's what this story really is, isn't it? Blu Cantrell was more than a singer with a few hits. She was a warning, a blueprint, a test case. The industry watched what happened to her and learned. They learned how to erase someone without a trace, how to spin mental health into a punchline, how to bury truth under NDAs, branding deals, and curated narratives. They learned that if you control the media, you don't have to control the facts. You just have to control the story. And Blu's story? It got rewritten by people who had something to lose. Her voice? Gone. Her royalties? Gone. Her shot at telling her side of things? Gone. But not because she failed. Because she fought. Because she refused to be quiet. Because she wouldn't sell her story to the highest bidder and walk away smiling. She made the mistake of challenging a system designed to make stars disposable, especially women, especially Black women, especially ones who know the truth. And it's not just her. When you lay it all out, Maya, Monica, Aaliyah, Tierra, Jaguar, even Britney and Kanye, you see it clearly. The crazy label isn't random. It's a shield, a weapon. Use it once and the world laughs. Use it twice and the world forgets. Use it long enough and you've successfully erased someone in real time. But what happens when the ones you silenced start speaking again? When the fans start connecting dots? When the documents resurface? When the internet won't let the story die? That's what makes this moment so dangerous for the people at the top. Because if Blu's story gets out, if the real story gets heard, it doesn't just change how we see her, it changes how we see them. Jay-Z, Beyoncé, the Carter empire. And that empire, it wasn't just built on brilliance and hustle. It may have been built on silencing the very people who could have told a different story. And once you realize that, you start wondering who else never got to tell theirs. By now, you've seen the pattern. You've heard the stories. You've connected the dots that were never supposed to be lined up. But here's the question no one wants to ask. What if this was never really about Blu Cantrell at all? What if Blu wasn't just a victim, but a symbol, a warning to every artist that came after her? A message from the top, step out of line, and this is what happens. Because think about it, bro. How many more were silenced before they ever got a chance? How many artists did everything right, had the voice, the look, the momentum, and then vanished without explanation? How many never dared to speak up because they saw what happened when Blu did? The story of Blu Cantrell isn't just about the past. It's about the playbook, one the industry still uses today. Build you up, put you on the stage, make you feel invincible. Then, the moment you stop being convenient, erase, discredit, forget. But here's the truth they can't bury forever. Blu was there. She was in the room. She saw the machine from the inside. She felt it when it turned on her, and her silence wasn't compliance. It was survival. But silence doesn't last forever. Because in this new age of TikTok detectives, Reddit threads, podcasts, exposés, and digital receipts, the truth finds a way to resurface. And now, we're looking at her story with fresh eyes. Not as a washed-up singer, not as a tabloid meltdown, but as the woman who knew too much and paid the price. So now, the burden falls on us, on you watching this. Do you buy the image they sold you? Or do you start questioning the legacy they forced on us? Do you believe that Blue Ivy is just a name? Or does it feel like a signature on a deal no one was ever supposed to talk about? Do you think Blu Cantrell faded away? Or do you finally see the truth? Because if this story is even half real, then the biggest lie the music industry ever sold us is who's really telling the truth. By now, you're probably asking the same thing we are. How did this all happen without anyone stopping it? How did a woman who sang for millions, topped charts, and stood on Grammy stages just vanish? The answer is simple. They don't hide the truth in the shadows. They hide it in plain sight, in red carpets, and baby bumps, in love songs, and music videos, in carefully timed interviews and magazine spreads. They cover the silence with sound. They mask the disappearance with distractions. Because the best cover-up isn't the one you never see. It's the one you see every day and never think to question. While Blu Cantrell was running barefoot through the streets, screaming about poison gas, we were streaming Drunk in Love and tweeting about the VMAs. While she tried to rebuild her career with no label, no PR, no team, we were watching Jay-Z and Beyoncé announce a billion-dollar tour. They weren't hiding what they did. They just trained us not to look. And let's be honest, this system doesn't need to delete people anymore. It just needs to make you scroll past them, to laugh at the crazy, to say, damn, what happened to her? And move on. Because once the public moves on, the industry already won. But here's what they didn't count on. People remembering. People putting the pieces together. People asking questions 10 years later, 20 years later. People like you watching this video right now. Because now we see it. We see how they lifted Beyoncé by eliminating the competition. We see how Jay-Z built a legacy on silence and strategic erasure. We see how the lawyers, the labels, and the press all played their part. And most of all, we see that Blu Cantrell never stopped being a threat. Not because of her voice, but because of her story. And now that story is being heard. So the question is no longer, what happened to Blu Cantrell? The real question is, what else have they erased? And who's next? Blu Cantrell didn't just disappear. She was erased. Her voice was stolen. Her name was buried. Her story twisted into a headline that made us forget who she really was. And in her place, a new narrative, a new name, a perfect family with a perfect image, built on a truth we were never meant to know. But now, you know. And once you start looking deeper at the timelines, the contracts, the sudden disappearances, you realize this wasn't just one woman's fall. It was a pattern, a strategy, a warning to anyone who steps out of line. So maybe this video doesn't answer every question, but maybe it wasn't supposed to, because sometimes the truth isn't in what they tell us. It's in what they make us forget. Now it's your turn. Do you think Blu Cantrell was erased on purpose? Do you believe the Blue Ivy theory? Or is this all just coincidence? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it.